Yes. Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind, and it is just the two of us, Jim. That's a cue for a song. I'm Paul John Dykes. I'm joined by Jim Orr. There's loads to discuss in the world of Celtic. It's 12:30 on a Friday afternoon. Welcome back, Jim. You've been a busy bee yourself on your theatre shows. How's things going? Can you give us a wee update on dates and when we should be buying tickets? It's payday today, apparently.
Payday today. A chance to see the comedy legend that is Des McLean playing the Celtic legend that is Bertie Auld. So that's on in 2 weeks' time. It's coming up pretty quickly. The first 13 days is the first show. So we're on Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday afternoon, and Saturday night. And we're not clashing with a Celtic game. I was relieved the other day that St Mirren game's on the Sunday. Otherwise, that might have caused us a bit of a problem, which it did last year when we had St Mirren at 5:30 on the Saturday. So we're pleased about that, and this will be the last time we do it. If not the last time for a long time. So this is your last chance to see the genius that is Des McLean, because that's what he is, playing the legend that is Bertie, because that's what he is as well. So get along. It's payday. That's what to do with your money today, guys. So
I can say safely that, I would highly recommend the show. Get along to see it, and I'll be coming along myself again, Jim, to see it a second time. That's how good it is. What I'm going to say, I'm going to throw this in here because people might be thinking, you're just advertising your shows. I've got a point to make on this, having watched the Jurgen Klopp video, Jim. He has announced, of course, that he is going to be leaving Liverpool at the end of the season. And it got me to thinking about the kind of stress and the pressure and the anxiety and all these things. We see these figures, be it at Celtic, Liverpool, just footballers, managers. We just see them almost as objects on a screen, almost as if they're not human, they're robotic. They can just put up with the constant day-to-day pressure, Jim. But, I mean, it must be huge. And it was a refreshingly honest interview that he gave, I thought.
Great. It was really good. Really good and really sad, I suppose, as well. And I think, just to back up your point, we see the tip of the iceberg. We don't actually see what happens, under that top level. And that's the same for so many things. And that's the bit we don't know about. People, this is just a couple of fans talking about Celtic. That's all it is. And people shouldn't get too wound up about this. Some of the comments that you see that people post about this, you think you know better than the manager. You should be the manager. You think you should be the manager. No. The point of a podcast is for people to just, a Celtic podcast, just to chat about Celtic. So don't get too wound up. It's no big deal. And as long as you do it in a kind of civilised manner, then that's okay. And people are going to disagree with what you say. Absolutely fine, but do it in a kind of civilised manner. And that's, last time I was a comment on YouTube, you should be the manager. You think you know everything. You're thinking, no, I don't. You're just chatting about it. Because in fact, if you didn't do anything, there'd be no podcast. In terms of the manager thing, we've got no idea. We've got no idea what it must be like to be manager a football club. Never mind Celtic. You've got down the leagues. Ayr United, Scott Brown's in there, an amateur team, a junior team. I took kids football for up to under 19s. It's not stressful, but a lot of times it's a real pain. So we've got no idea what's going on, and we just comment from a position of ignorance. So people shouldn't get wound up about this. And we don't know what's happening. We don't know what it's like to be a football player. And we glibly say things like, we should get rid of him, or he's not good enough, and Vata's big-headed, and whatever it is. We've got no idea. And then people may say things that are misinterpreted or misconstrued or one of those other miswords. It just, we don't know. And you can see in his face, because when he first turned up at Liverpool, he was a kind of fresh-faced guy, dead enthusiastic. He looks kind of aged a wee bit, and he looks a bit haggard from what he was before. And he's a really nice guy. It's just a shame there's not more managers like Jurgen Klopp. And he's had success. He's won the league. He's won the Champions League. So he's done the business there. So he's kind of fulfilled what he was there to do. But because Man City are so good, I think, any manager down there is going to find it difficult to knock them off their perch. And, you could be spending 24/7 trying to buy players, trying to coach players, trying to motivate players, all these kind of things. And you turn up and you do everything you can do, and you're a really good team, and you still don't win the league, and you're frustrated by that. But he said he's done well over the years in managing teams. He must be a very rich man as well. Do you actually need that kind of pressure when you get to that kind of age? Don't think so. Yeah.
Well, I was looking at that and trying to think about obviously what we talk on a daily basis, and like you say, Jim, this is just a different format of the old fanzines where everybody had the right of their own opinion. Some was good, some was was not so good that you would agree and disagree with. It was hilariously funny. I don't know how often Acsom is that, but you would pick up on other views. And I remember Not the View in particular, which was my personal favourite, Jim, and you and I obviously have exchanged fanzines over the years. I always felt that it gave you another way of thinking about the football club. And at that time, in the 1987 issue, you read the first issue of Not the View, and what they're talking about, Jim, they're talking about building an all-seater stadium. They're talking about, a share issue. And I remember as a kid reading this thinking, I want to talk about Paul McStay and Frank McAvey. I don't want to discuss boardroom trouble. So oftentimes I think that when you're talking about things and it might appear as though you're being negative, for example, it's not. It's because Jim Orr, myself, JP yesterday, every single one of us love Celtic Football Club and we want to see the club doing its absolute best and its maximum. Frustrations creep in. And I think yesterday, JP was very, very balanced in relation to the transfer window, because I always look at this thing, Jim, of instant gratification now, because we're all carrying smartphone devices about. You want the news and you want it, as soon as it's announced, you want it. And it's the same. It's changed everything from football, the way you support it, to music. And we've just got to, I think, embrace it. So what we're doing here is giving an opinion, and some of it will be disagreed with, and I absolutely welcome it. But with regards to the transfer window, which is inevitably going to be discussed today, it looks as though a couple of things have happened in the last few days. First thing I want to talk about, Jim, Brendan Rodgers came out and he put it out there, Matt O'Reilly's going nowhere. He's going nowhere. He will be a Celtic player to the end of this season. And yes, it's a statement of intent. Absolutely delighted with it. There's a shade of inevitability about Matt O'Reilly with his Celtic career, because he's so good and his trajectory has been so steep. But it's brilliant to hear the gaffer coming out. Straight away, though, a lot of people look at that and they give a negative hue to it, a negative twist, in that, all right, we're going to be saying it's been a good transfer window because we've kept O'Reilly. Right. What's your whole take on it? I'm just delighted he's staying. That's the first thing I would say.
I mean, because there's just the two of us today, I'm going to turn it on its head. If you're Matt O'Reilly, why do you want to stay? Why do you want to stay? You've won the league a couple of times. We've got a genuine competition this year, so it's not going to be that straightforward. You're playing in plastic pitches. You're playing in horrible weather. Why do you want to stay? Never mind why do you want to go. Never mind why do you want to go. Why do you want to stay? Because you've kind of done it. And if any big club comes calling, then you're going to go. I mean, I kind of get more annoyed about what football has become because of the money, as opposed to what happens within the football environment itself. So something like, I don't know, Eddie going to Palace. right. We knew Eddie would go to Palace at some point in time. Well, we knew Eddie would go.
Yeah.
And the fact he's went to Palace shows how mad the football world is. Because I read something the other day about Brentford have spent as much as Inter Milan, and Sheffield United, I think, has spent as much as Dortmund or something like that. Like, now, that's the food chain we're in just now. So it's pointless to get annoyed, because if big old Sheffield United come calling one of their players, they're going to go. And that's how it works. And I think because of the strategy we've got, if you want to call it a strategy, if we sign any player under 25, I would expect them to come here and want to establish themselves in the team and then move on. And if they weren't thinking that, I would question why they were coming. And the board like that. That's what they want to do. They want to sign young guys, come in, we'll develop you, we'll give you a platform, you'll hit the big time by go down south or whatever. We'll make a lot of money, and we hit the jackpot occasionally with a Jota or a Virgil van Dijk. But I just think it's the wrong way to go. And it's dead exciting when you get these really good players, but they're going to go. And Matt O'Reilly's going to go. Whether it's before next week, whether it's before the summer, he's going to go. That's how it works. And for me, the strategy is wrong. I think for every Matt O'Reilly we sign, we should type of player, we should sign an Aaron Moy type of player. Young experience. So you build up some sort of team there. Mm-hmm. Because if you sign the young players, you've got instability straight away. They come, they play, they do well, they go. Or the opposite. They come, they don't play so well, and you've got a bloated squad with players you don't want. So you either lose or lose in that situation. That we go in, I'm going to bore people again with the same thing. I've said this before. We go out and sign somebody at 28, 27, 28, 29, experienced player who's got experience playing the Champions League or Europa League, maybe been capped for his country a few years ago. He's maybe just past his peak, who plays in Sweden or Denmark or Hungary or someplace like that. You bring him over, it won't cost you a lot of money, because I'm not for spending 7, 8, 9 million pound on players. You get him for 2, 3, 4 million quid. His wages are manageable. It's a huge move for him. It's like the biggest move of his career. He'll be here in 4 years' time. So you've got stability then if you get somebody like that. And he will also help the younger players as well. And you've then got a chance of maybe doing something in Europe, because Europe's where it's at. And the fact that we continually fail in Europe is unacceptable. And I look at the Celtic team just now. Who are the experienced players? Callum, Joe Hart. That's it. Joe Hart's a keeper. So we've got one outfield player who's an experienced player. That's a concern to me. And I think it shows when you get into Europe. You get more experienced players in the team. And I know that you talked about people wanting things straight away. Go and spend £10 million on a player. Well, that's one option that you've got, but that's not the board's view of thing. And we saw in the chairman's statement, whenever that was before, he was virtually saying, we're going to hoard money in case we don't get into the Champions League. Now, that's one way to go. Another way to go is to spend. And I think there's a middle ground. And we need to hit the middle ground that says we'll make some kind of sensible purchases that will give us a chance to do well in Europe. We're not going to go mad on this, but sensible stuff. And we're not even doing that. And I think that's the big concern. And I also don't buy into it. I haven't seen the podcast this week. I don't know what people have been saying, knowing what seen much social media this week. But basically, what's happened in transfer windows in the past, there's been the line trotted out that we're dead close to get X, Y, Z, and we just failed. And that's meant to appease people. That's meant to say, oh, you did your best. You did your best. You take any job out there, a sales job, whatever, and you've got a target to hit, and you missed all your targets. How do you get on? I was really close. Really, really close. And then you do that again. Hold on, you said that last time I was really close. Your job is to do X, Y, Z. And see if you don't do X, Y, Z, you're not doing your job. Near misses are no good in this. And we've got people in there. And again, the point you make about, we don't know what it's like to be the manager. We don't know what it's like to be the guy who's trying to find players. We don't know what's involved in that. Because as fans, we tend to think everything's dead easy. That should be dead easy. Why can't you just go out and buy some players? Just pay them money. But legally, that's really complex. You're bringing a young guy from other end of the world, whatever, potentially over here, putting on a tail. Are they the right fit? It is a very complex issue. We accept it's a very complex issue, but the people who are there, they should be qualified to do that. And I think the main rivals, I read something in the paper a few weeks ago, they've just brought in a new head of recruitment, and that's his job. Nothing else but that. You focus on that. So is that what our guy does? Does our guy just focus on, or does he do other things as well? Is he involved? I don't know, because we don't know the full story. And we make assumptions, and that's part of the fun. Part of the fun is just chatting about the football, talking nonsense, people picking you up, saying, I don't think you're right, I think this is right. And that's all fair game, absolutely. But I just think that the question was, what was the question? Matt O'Reilly. Sorry, Matt O'Reilly. If I'm Matt O'Reilly, why would I stay? And you can say, what is Celtic, big club? Is it really? Money talks all the time. If you get a chance to play for Atletico Madrid, for goodness sake, you go there in a second. The climate, the type of club you're playing for, etc., etc., etc. And then you've got the club's viewpoint, a loan to buy. Don't be daft. We would never do that. And even the buy might be daft. If they offered us 15 million, you would say, don't think so, mate. So you've got the club's point of view that says, you've signed a contract, we're sticking to the contract, but we don't as an unhappy player as well. So how do you balance those two? And we had that in Neil Lennon's last season, where we understand there was a number of players were unhappy and wanted to go. And again, we don't know, because we hear the stories that it was the board that said, no, you need to keep them. So why did we blow the 10? It was the board's fault. Or was it their fault? Was it Neil's? Who knows what actually happened? If that happened, we think, well, that's because of that. that happened, that's because of that. We don't really know, and we're surmising quite a lot, and we're giving our tuppence worth based on incomplete information, and we'll never know all the information, because all we do is see the tip of that iceberg, how well a player plays on that Saturday. We don't know what he's doing all week in training.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's not made the squad. Now, I mentioned a few weeks ago the Lagerbielke situation confuses me, but I don't know the full story about that. All I see is somebody who, when he's come in, he's done okay. He's not been a disaster. He went to if we win this league, the 1-0 victory at Ibrox will have been pivotal in winning that league. And Scales and Lagerbielke were outstanding. They made a few mistakes in the game, but we had a shutout and we won the game. And I don't see too much wrong with the guy, but apparently he's out of the plans. We want to get rid of him. Back and forth. Woody Anno, again, when he's on the park, he looks good. He's better than Phillips, I think. And the manager went and thought, let's bring in that Phillips instead of Lagerbielke. So, and you would maybe question some of the manager signings in the past. So if you give him the money, is he going to spend it wisely? The manager said before the transfer window, I want X, Y, Z. And that's not happened. So that's a kind of, what's the phrase? A hostage to fortune. That you've said that and it's not happened. So you can't be happy. One assumes, tip of the iceberg, you can't be happy at that.
But the assumption's okay, because that's what being a football fan or a group of football fans has always been about. Jim, you think about my old fella down the pit, or anybody's parents who worked in dockyards or the steelworks or whatever. Leading up to the game, everybody had an opinion. After the game, everybody had an opinion on the supporters' buses and the boozers before games, and the fanzine, the pages of the fanzines, and now on the airwaves and podcasting and broadcasting. And it's fine. It's absolutely fine. And we love to hear other views on it. I think that when you look at, happy birthday, Brendan Rodgers, today, by the way, 51 years of age is Brendan. When you look at the difference between the summer and winter transfer windows, people will point out they're often different. You get a lot more business done in the summer, absolutely. But it does seem as though he has tightened his belt somewhat in terms of the amount of players coming in. He's spoken about, we could assign players, we could just sign players. With the injury to Greg Taylor, and it was going to happen, Jim, because he's played so much football. I mean, the last time I checked, correct me in the comments, he's played every game of football that Celtic have played this season. And we're now at the end of January. So he's turned into that kind of, that player that Callum McGregor is, where if he's fit, he plays for different reasons. McGregor's a captain, the influential orchestrator of the team. Greg Taylor's on the left back, worthy of playing. I think that's the reason he plays. And it was always going to happen. And I spoke about my fears over the last few days. If Joe Hart, Greg Taylor, or Kyogo get injured, the question was, are you happy with their backups? Right now, no, because O isn't even in the building. He's at the Asian Cup. Joe Hart, there's a big drop down despite his detractors between Joe Hart and Scott Bain. And the question would be, who do you even play at left back, Jim? So I'm going to ask you, we were forced into an emergency buy. It was a loan, of course, in the summer due to the centre-half issues. We bring in Nat Phillips. Didn't work out for him. Number of reasons, partly due to the resurgence of Liam Scales. Is this going to force our hand again? I mean, I was thinking about the options. Bernabe, Alexandro Bernabe, the lesser seen left back from Argentina. Apparently the club are happy to offload him on a permanent basis. It might be difficult to do that because he's not played much football. Mm-hmm. We'll be wanting, I assume, pull some of the transfer fee back. So you've got Bernabe, you've got Mitchell Frame, who we've seen on one occasion for the first team against Feyenoord. So there's your two left backs. Then you've got players that you would need to play out of position. And I'm going to include Liam Scales in that, because the reason I never rated Liam Scales is because he was playing left back, not left-sided centre-half. You've got, bizarrely enough, Rio Hatate, who can play left back, and you've got Anthony Ralston. I think your safest bet there is probably Tony Ralston, Jim. Out of the names I've mentioned, it's probably Tony Ralston out of position.
I think you maybe get back to the question of the board strategy in this window. Because if you're this bloated squad, we've got hundreds of people in the squad. If you're the board and you look at what we've got just now with this bloated squad, would you say that this squad is good enough to win the league? Yes. Would you say, and there's one pivotal game, and that's at Ibrox in April, is this squad good enough to go to Ibrox and win? Yes, they are. So if you're the board, you're thinking, why would we spend money? That's not my view. I'm just saying, if you're the board, Why would you spend money? But my opinion is that if you don't do obvious things and you fail, you're to blame. You're to blame. And I think I said last time I was on, Joe Hart is the big concern for me. I think if we lose Joe Hart, as you said, the fall off in quality is quite large. Although Alan Morrison's stats say something knows large, but I just think stats are great, but putting Scott Bain in goals just panics everyone, defence, the whole team. And so it's more than just the stats for me. And I think not having an adequate backup for Joe Hart is a big, big concern. And you got that kick in the head against St Mirren, you're thinking, oh dear. And then we've been saying for a while, we need a backup for the goalkeeper, need a backup for left back, need a backup for the striker. And then the inevitable happens that your left back gets injured. So there's an obvious thing we should have done, and we didn't do it. And the fact comes back to bite us, then that's whoever's made that decision, whether that's the manager's decision or whether the board have stopped. And again, because we don't know who's doing what, but we've got loads of options in there. There's young guy, Frame, there's Bernaby, as you said. It's maybe time Bernaby stood up, because sometimes, lots of times in football, when something unfortunate happens to one player, somebody comes in and takes a chance, like Liam Scales has come in and taken his chance with the kind of centre-half situation. So I'd like to see Bernaby come in, have a chance, do well, and shows what kind of player he is, because he's obviously a decent player. I mean, we wouldn't have spent that amount of money if he wasn't a decent player. Then you think, well, we spent a lot on a jetty, so what do we know? So, but yeah, kind of, it's such a tight race this season, and almost for the highlights of the game at Easter the other night, but they kind of swatted Hibs away as if they weren't there. So
yeah,
we can't drop points. That's always been the case. Ibrox and April's, April sounds a long way away, but that'll come up pretty quickly. We have to be ahead in the league going to Ibrox, because if we're not ahead going into that game, then we might be in trouble. So I think whether it's Tony, Rolson, a large frame, or Bernaby, we're well covered for that. With Ross County at home, if we drop points again, at that kind of game, then we don't deserve to win the league at the end of the day. I mean, my concern is we're coming up for a pretty tough run of games. Pittodrie, Easter Road, Tynecastle, I think Fir Park as well is in there as well. So we need our best team for all these games. And I mentioned last time about we can postpone the games if we want to, because that's the rules, and as long as you abide by the rules, that's okay. And if we maybe had a chance to cancel it, to postpone the game and didn't do it and drop points, you might say after, well, maybe we should have postponed that game. But then again, that might not look too clever in the greater scheme of things. But there was a team who was in the bottom tier postponed a game one time when they'd somebody in international duty. So, but as long as it's in the rules, I don't have an issue with that.
No, I don't either, Jim. And I think you are going into that tricky section of games that obviously we got through in the first quarter of the season, and many of those grounds that when you look at the fixture list, you think that was going to be a tough fixture regardless how the team's doing. They make it tough. It's a stuffy fixture. We're going through that particular round of fixtures very, very shortly indeed. And there was talk around the fact that, not complacency, but it was almost as if Bucky Thistle and Ross County, their games will take care of themselves. There's no rush to get guys in the door. Let's do it right. Let's get the quality that the gaffer needs. And then Greg Taylor gets injured. So let us know your thoughts. What do we do? Because I'm always banging on about youth, bringing in youth and developing players and graduating them from the academy. And if you ask me, who do you play? I would love to see Mitchell Frame playing. Who do I think Rodgers will play? Probably Tony Ralston. And he'll switch him from right to left. Someone has also thrown in Lagerberg. I'll need to double check to see how much games he's played at left back in his career as well. You mentioned Albion Ayeti, 26 years of age, a Swiss international footballer, Jim, who is now without a club. His deal, obviously we were able to offload him. I'm talking about him like he's just a commodity, not a human being, which is how we opened this show up. We were able to move him on, and his move has lasted since September to January, and he's now been offloaded. So he's a free agent. And you look at that player and the demise almost of his career, and you just hope that he's able to pull it back. Matt O'Reilly, on the other hand, his career's going in the other way. You look at the way that his career's developed. He obviously at Fulham played alongside, it was Maurice Jens, and Peter Grant was involved in the coaching then. He knows a lot about a young Matt O'Reilly. But when you look at the fact that in July 2020, Matt O'Reilly decided to leave Fulham without having a deal lined up. He had no deal lined up, and he didn't find a club until January, Jim. I mean, talk about backing yourself. That's 6 months without a club as a young footballer. Goes to MK Dons. Obviously, has had to keep himself mentally and physically fit in that half-year period without a club. Makes a name for himself, and the trajectory has gone through the ceiling since then. So I'm going to go back to the point you made. Why would he stay? This is the reason I'm looking at O'Reilly. His career's going like that. All you need to do is have a look over at any other football careers that are going down like that. Albin Ayeti was a highly rated Swiss international striker who was scoring goals for fun in a BAL team alongside the likes of Mohamed El Yunusi. Look at his career now. He's without a club. So footballers look at that. And I'm not saying they look at Albin Ayeti, but they look at other players and they think anything can happen. Like that. You know, just a flick of a switch, anything can happen. That's one of the reasons why he would definitely think about going elsewhere. What can we do to keep them is always my big question, because there's a cycle. Carter Vickers is in the cycle, O'Reilly's in the cycle. All the great players that we've had are in this cycle. Cycle comes to an end, sometimes prematurely, too prematurely for fans like you and I, Jim. Jota, far too early for him to leave. The club's never going to say no to that kind of money. How do we, I don't know, extend the cycle or try and keep them at that wee bit longer? And I think the only way you do it is with European progress, because we can give them the Champions League nights and the famous atmosphere at Celtic Park on the Champions League. But if you've done it for 2 seasons like Matt has done, and you've not really made great progress, you've gone from 2 points to 4 points comparing last season to this season. It's not enough for a player that's on that trajectory and with that level of ambition. And it's a foregone conclusion, isn't it, Jim? And I asked the question, what can we do to keep them longer? It's got to be European progression, hasn't it?
I don't think you can do anything, and that's what I said at the start. I think we're in this environment there where we are. So a player, if it's Matt O'Reilly or somebody else, who can go to the Spanish league and earn whatever he can earn 2, 3, 4 times what he's getting, he's set up for life. He's putting in a really nice climate. His own self-esteem rises incredibly, and that's why I said that I'd rather go for experienced players, because you can love them and they'll still be here in 4 years' time.
Yeah.
We hark back to a different era. I certainly do, and you do a bit, to your Roy Aitkins and your Paul McStays and your Peter Grants and your Davy Provins and Murdo McLeod and all that sort of stuff. That ain't going to happen again. So I'm resigned to that's not going to happen again. And they are commodities to a certain extent, because as I said, if you're bringing a young guy in, you would expect them to say 2, maybe 3 years. If they're good, off they go. And if they're bad, they're on a wage bill like a Burnaby type of thing. So I just think it is what it is. And you like to see your teams getting better. And to get better, you do need stability. How do you get stability? Buy players that you think will stay. If you buy 21, 22-year-old players, they're going to go. It's like young German guy we've just brought here. I don't expect him to be here in a couple of years' time, if he's good, because he's played for Ajax, he's played for Bayern Munich. This is a stop-off to something better. And that's fine. That's totally fine by me. He's not going to bigger clubs. He's going to wealthier clubs.
Yeah.
And that's the issue. I don't have an issue with that, because it is what it is. You could never imagine 20 years ago the top striker at Celtic wanting to go to Crystal Palace. John Hughes went there, Willie Wars, when they were in a kind of downward slide. When we're going to go, we'll just go to Crystal Palace. Whereas Palace and Sheffield United and all these, I don't watch matches. Well, I do watch Match of the Day, but I kind of skim through it. I record it and then kind of skim through it. And after the first couple of games, it's all dross. It really is.
I'm going to ask you, Jim. I used to love English football. Loved it, right? And I've said this before, and JP and I are from a kind of similar era. You'd buy the magazines, you'd buy your Panini stickers, you knew all the players. And it wasn't as soon as Sky came in, because I thought it was really exciting when Sky came in. I remember the adverts. Remember Simple Minds were the soundtrack of these.
Live and kicking,
yeah. And it was like, wow. And then they start bringing in all these big names and everything else. It's gone mad now. But some people in the comments, when I talk about the fact that I fell out of love with English football, I've not watched it for a number of seasons. And I am thinking to keep my hand in, getting back into it. Is it worth watching again? Let us know in the comments. Jim, would you suggest it's worth my time, even if it's just once a week on Match of the Day?
No, I've watched Match of the Day, and that kind of keeps you up to date with what's been happening. But I thought when I retired almost 5 years ago, I would pick an English top team and I'd make them my team. And I've always had a soft spot for a number of teams for different reasons, be it Liverpool or be it Man United or be it Tottenham, because I'm always a big Tottenham fan, or Arsenal back in the day. And then when the push came to shove, I couldn't be bothered, basically, because the whole point of the podcast is Celtic State of Mind. You don't have a Tottenham state of mind or an Arsenal state of mind, so you don't care at the end of the day.
True.
It doesn't bother you. And it's the same as when people, I know people like American football and they've got a team over there. No, you don't. You just watch.
There's no emotional investment. There's
no emotional investment. All you're doing is watching the colours of their jerseys. There's a great Seinfeld sketch where he talks about, you've got a player who plays in your jersey and you love him, and then he comes back wearing a different jersey and you boo him. You're just booing the jersey. Basically, that's all you're doing. And that's exactly what it is. You're just booing it. But match of the day, because, as I said, I don't like the way football's went, but I watch it for the sake of just keeping up to date, people like yourself. But if you get back to the early 1990s, I could rhyme off all the league winners, all the FA Cup winners, going back 20, 30 years before that. I could rhyme off most of the players and most of the teams easily. If you go back to pre-1990, loads of those English teams had Scottish players playing for them. Mm-hmm. So that was an interest as well. I'll put match of the day on, and if it's Man City, I can maybe name 3 or 4 players. If it's Brentford or Sheffield United, I have no idea who these people are. And there's Bournemouth are in there, and Luton are in there, and all. It's and that's why I think the bigger teams down there want a Super League, because you want to play against big teams. Now, whether Bournemouth have earned the right to be in that top league, and that's absolutely fine, totally fine. But if you're Man United, Liverpool going to play at Bournemouth, you'd rather come to Celtic Park or Ibrox or whatever else. And then when you go into the continent, you'd rather go to the San Siro or the Nou Camp. And I can see that's what, and that is the future. That's exactly what will happen because money will dictate. That's what's going to happen. And again, we are where we are with this stuff. And I see kind of the odd articles about football. I think I did a year subscription to the Athletic, so I stopped that. But I get the emails every day, and it's just kind of headlines, and you scan through the headlines, and it's when you're thinking, this guy's on 200 grand a year, and he's going to be a sub all season, but he's a good impact player, and he could do this. And you're thinking, it just went mad. The whole thing's went mad. And there's this elite over up there earning silly money, and then there's everyone else who are kind of struggling. And you look at somebody like Livingston are in the top league in Scotland, and they're playing their players, what, a few £100 a week or something? Yeah. They're playing a plastic pitch. And that's when you get back to the matter of that manager done.
Keep him? You're right. How do you keep him?
That David,
they're playing there twice a season. Yeah.
That David Martindale's done an amazing job, an absolutely astonishing job down there. But again, it is what it is with this wee tiny stadium that holds about 6,000 people, and it's in a plastic pitch. If you want to play at the top level, why are you playing there? Kilmarnock's a plastic pitch. I mean, the plastic pitch should be banned, isn't another thing. But how do we make Scottish football better, more entertaining for people? You want Hibs to be good. You want Hearts to be good. You want Aberdeen to be good. I mean, Hibs look like, pretty poor again. I mean, hopefully not saying that in advance of the game. Maybe it wasn't a couple of weeks' time, but Hibs look pretty awful. Aberdeen, I want cold. Hearts, you want them to be good. You want them to push you. I would have no objections if Hearts win the league. None at all. That's because what a boost of Scottish football would be. We don't let the other team win in the league.
You weren't thinking that in 1986, Jim. You weren't thinking that when we went to Love Street in 86. No, but at least they're challenged.
I would love somebody to come along, I can spend serious money on a Hearts or a Hibs or an Aberdeen and make them a force and make it exciting. And that's
wasn't it David Lowe? Wasn't it David Lowe that said if he was going to invest in a Scottish football club, it would be Hibs? Because he's seen that there was that potential, Jim. I'm sure that was a few years ago.
Big city club. I mean, one would assume if he took over a Hearts or a Hibs and Aberdeen, the big city clubs, you want them to be good. I mean, you want Celtic to win the league. Obviously, you want Celtic to win everything and to completely dominate. But if Hearts win at the odd time or Hibs win at the odd time, you'd be disappointed. Yeah, but you say, no, what? In the bigger picture, the bigger scheme of things, that's actually pretty good for Scottish football. And that's why people look down in Scottish football. It's a 2-horse race. And one horse died a few years ago, but it's a 2-horse race. It is what it is. And therefore, those Glasgow Derby games mean so much. They're so pivotal in the whole season. And the two teams are so far ahead of everyone else, then it's about not dropping sloppy points. because those sloppy points might cost you the league. And what's been good, actually, I think in the last couple of seasons, that before every season, I kind of think, well, what would be a good season?
Mm-hmm.
And I usually say, well, dropping, you've got the Glasgow Derby games and the rest. And I look at them differently. And I say in the Glasgow Derby games, as long as we win 2, draw 1 and lose 1, that's acceptable. That should give you a platform for winning the league, I think. Any less than that, you may be in trouble, because the other games, you're going to drop points at Pittodrie and Tynecastle, Easter Road. You shouldn't be dropping points at home to St Johnstone, which we've done this season. So when you balance all that up and you look at Ange's 2 seasons, I think, 1-2, 1-2, lost 1, drew 1. That's right. And then last season was the same, even though the one we lost, the league was finished. But this season we won the first 2 encounters, which we hadn't done in the past 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And we can't afford to draw and lose the next 2. So that's because we've won the 2 derbies. So in theory, we should be at least 6 points ahead. They win the games and Hammer only 2 ahead. Why is that? Because we've dropped sloppy points, and we can't drop sloppy points. And I'm not trying to be negative, but this season's been a bit underwhelming for me. It's been a bit up and down. There's been a lack of consistency. You don't know what kind of Celtic is going to turn up. You don't know what kind of style of play we're going to play. So I'm not 100%. We're going to go through these next, the next 4 games where we go to those really tough venues. We will know where we are come, I think it's the 2nd of March, when the 4th of those games is finished.
Mm-hmm.
If we're still 2 points ahead, that'll be pretty encouraging. If we're not 2 points ahead, we're an even bigger race than we thought. So, but that's exciting as well. If you were 15 points ahead and the league's finished, where's your excitement? So there's a bit of a balancing act that you can squish the league and it's too easy, you're not excited, or you can be excited. But the downside of being excited is what you said earlier, that we need to sign players, because if we don't sign players, we'll win the league. So do quick, do something. So, but that's football, and that's the fun of football. At the end of the day, we shouldn't get too serious and too hung up about a lot of these things, because all we're doing is just chatting about football. That's it. Yeah. It's more important things in life and football. So don't get too stressed out. The people who comment on things, there's a life out there. Go out and get it sometime, because some of the stuff. Somebody said, look, 2 weeks ago, somebody said I look disinterested when other people are talking. That's my natural look, actually, to be disinterested in what's happening. And then somebody piled on this. He's a grown man. This is disrespectful.
I didn't feel disrespected, Jim, I've got to say. Because when sitting here, and by the way, I don't sit in the same room as JP Mason on a Thursday. I've had people mentioning that. We are sitting side by side, JP and I, facing in the same direction. But when I'm doing this, as well as obviously the notes that you've made, I'm looking through comments, and I'm going to bring a few of them up just now. So if Jim was looking disinterested in your view, then it wouldn't have put me up nor down, because unfortunately for you, Jim, I wasn't staring and gazing in your eyes. But you're talking there about the Scottish game. Obviously, there's certain elements that hold it back. Totally agree with you. I think we've got clubs like Aberdeen. I've always regarded Aberdeen, Dundee United, Hibs and Hearts, and then obviously Celtic Rangers. And I think we've got 6 clubs there that should all be doing well and all competing at a level. Most of those other 5 clubs have had catastrophic seasons. They've had a poor run of games where they've changed manager after manager, and they don't know what it is to be a winning club. They don't have the mentality. And even when they get to that point, and I remember quite a few years ago when Burley was the manager of Hearts and they had a brilliant start, Jim, they didn't know how to capitalise on it. They absolutely imploded. And that there is that element. Aberdeen under McInnes, when we didn't have a great side in the second season under Dyla, opportunity there. Do something. You didn't do it because you don't have the same mentality and budget. I get that as well. But yeah, you want the Scottish game to be stronger. You want it to be as good as it possibly can be. If the carrot of Atletico Madrid is dangled in front of our star player, which O'Reilly undoubtedly is this season, and you're thinking about all the drawbacks of Scottish football, it's a hard sell. It's a hard sell, is what I'm saying, to stay here. Absolutely. So as a football club, we need to obviously maximise our ability to do as well as we possibly can on a European stage. And whilst you're in Scottish football, even that is obviously limited. FTB, thank you for contributing once again to a Celtic State of Mind Anybody who supports the channel in any way possible allows us to do things like tonight. So we've got a wee gig. I say a wee gig. It's the biggest gig we've ever done. And it's at the Greenock Beacon Theatre. Anyone who's coming along, you will have received emails over the last few days telling you what the schedule of events is, and also your seating number. Come along and you'll see our staff at the front doors to welcome you in, usher you to your seat, and hopefully enjoy a brilliant night. Going to do it a wee bit differently tonight because we're in a theatre, Jim. So you've got access to the big screens. I'm going to have Martin O'Neill footage on the screens as we walk through 4 chapters of the great man's life. Really looking forward to it. Paul Sheridan is going to entertain the crowd before and at half time. And if you want to ask a question, you can do it on Twitter/X, or you can email me, or the old-fashioned way where you write it down on the back of a fag packet and hand it into the merchandise desk, and we will go through all the best ones. And already I'm getting ones about, what did you think of Peter Lawwell? Of course, I'm going to ask that in front of 500 when we're celebrating the man's career. Joe Hamilton, a slumber around paradise. Joe, I'll tell you, I couldn't go this Monday because of the high winds, but I will be back on Monday. And hopefully when I'm back on Monday of next week, I'll be talking about a confident and entertaining victory against Ross County. Double denim, happy Friday, Acsom. Well, it happened, an injury to the left back. We've been calling it, Chris, we've been calling it for weeks. So do we panic, buy a replacement, take arguably our best centre-back and put him into a less effective position? Or do we trust the Argentinian? Right. I've already said what I think. I think Bernabe's had his chance. I don't think he is the answer. We need stability. You can get that from Ralston. He's not going to be as effective on his other side. I don't think it's a good idea to put Scales in there. Someone has suggested Lagerbielke. I'm just going to double check and see if he's ever played there. I should probably know that. But I don't think, as Jim said earlier on, that Lagerbielke is in Brendan Rodgers' plans. So I'm not sure that will happen. Personally, I would like us to go out and buy a left back. Now, I don't want us to buy an emergency that is a panic left back. We should have a shortlist already, Jim, because this was a position that has been identified. Apparently, we were after Owen Beck. He obviously can't play for Celtic this season. We must have a shortlist, let's say 3, 4, 5 left backs, and we can maybe go back to the clubs and see what the situation is. Will we do that, Jim? What do you reckon?
No, I won't do that. I said earlier that you just ring them off there. You've got Ralston, you've got Bernabe, and you've got young guy Frame, and you could have Lagerbielke in there. So why would you? I mean, if you're the board, why would you go out and do that? I think what I was talking about earlier was the fact that for the clubs to do better in Europe, we need a kind of better left back. Greg Taylor's absolutely fine for the SPFL, absolutely fine. You go out and buy somebody who's not as good as Greg Taylor to get a backup for only 16 games that they have to go. I don't think you do. If there's a chance to buy a good, high-quality left back who's going to take over from Greg Taylor, on you go, knock yourself out. Yep. The lad Beck, I know a lot of people have been saying he's a good player. I don't think, I think that's a young guy again. I don't think that's big. My criteria, if I'd have brought in some, who's the guy who played for Bodo Glimt we were always linked with? What's the guy's name? Can't remember. Him. He must be back as well. I remember the guy. We're always linked with the guy. Somebody will say in the comments. Not that I'm looking at the comments. But somebody a bit older, a bit experienced. Somebody who'd be saying, see next year, that's the guy we're going to play in Europe. If we brought somebody like that in, on we go. But I think we've got enough cover there. Going to Ibrox without Greg Taylor, I think that's maybe a bit of a concern. Going to Ibrox without our first picks is a bit of a concern. But the other games, although they are tougher, going to Aberdeen and Hibs and all this thing, individually and collectively, we should be winning these games, unless we're really unlucky. Or we play below our acceptable performance levels. But no, we should be okay. And what I'm concerned about is we're now into panic mode. We're now into the last few days of the window mode, and I think we thought those days were over. Particularly in the last 2 seasons, where we seem to be. We knew who we were getting. We got them in early. In fact, we'd identified them and announced them before the window even opened, and they came in on day one. So that's a concern. We're leaving this to the last minute. And injuries to Joe Hart or Kyogo, we could be in big trouble. But again, if you're the board, well, play Abada through the centre. We could play Palmer through the centre. We could do, because we've got this huge squad. And if we've got this huge squad, utilise the squad. And that's why I'm a bit confused at times. I said earlier in the season, I wasn't sure why the manager came back, because he must have been given assurances that certain things would happen. and he said some things, and these haven't actually happened yet. So, are the manager's objectives and the board's objectives aligned? I'm not so sure they are, because if I'm the manager, I want the best players possible, and no matter what it costs. And obviously, there are budget ceilings, whatever, but it's not actually happened yet. And all we've had is, to my understanding, the one signing. And I was there. For all you out there. I was.
How did you enjoy it, Jim?
It was quite surreal. I mean, it was your roving Acsom reporter reporting here for duty.
Did you have one of the hats and all that on? Inspector Gadget jackets?
Inspector Gadget. I mean, obviously you gave us a call a couple of hours beforehand. You couldn't make it along to the media conference, and I'd imagine that you don't get invited to them all, so I'd imagine that's a black mark. So I'll go. And I was quite blasé about it, to be honest. And then I was quite impressed with the mainstream media. They go first, and Mark Benstead, Sky, really good. And on my way over there, I'm thinking, what do I ask? What am I going to ask this player? Because I've never been to one of these things before. And I'd kind of 3 or 4 questions in mind, but the mainstream, they asked them all, and then follow-up questions. So I had nothing, basically. And then it's the fan media's turn, and then there was only about 7 there, and I was at the back, and then they did about 5 of them. Is that us? And I went, oh no, I bet that's a question. And then you get to say, hi Nick, welcome to Celtic. Thinking, this is mental. This is totally mental. Hi Nick, welcome to Celtic. Thanks, he says. And I thought, oh, that's a Champions. You're looking forward to Champions League nights at Celtic Park. And then he gave a wee spiel about that. And I said, good luck. And he said, thanks. And you're thinking, this is bonkers. He's sitting in his strip on, and I'm saying, good luck, mate. And then he passed by me, so I shook his hand. I wished him good luck again. And they did a photo kind of session down at the kind of front of the stand. And you wander down, and I'm taking pictures. It's all a bit mental. And then I was still quite blasé about the whole thing. And then on Twitter at night time, and that was all the kind of main thing people were talking about, the signing of Nick, as he told us to call him, Nick. The signing of Nick and da-da-da-da-da. And I thought, an actual fight, what's a big deal? Because I was there. And I shook his hand, I wished him good luck. So actually, it was a fantastic opportunity, and thank you for that. Because at the time I'm thinking, this is. I was really blasé. I wondered what's happening here. Here's a guy in a Celtic top. Okay, right, fine. And then, you're right. You looking forward to? Fine. You picture it. But it's only when I saw it on Twitter, I thought, that was quite a big thing. So yeah, me and my pal Nick. But yeah, so that was a day in the life of what you do. Hold the back page. Hold exactly. The back page.
What you have done since you retired is quite the journey. And I think that when we're talking about players in, players out, and we do refer to them almost like you say, commodity, just objects that you're moving in and out. It's a natural thing to do. You also mentioned there about this kind of disconnect, if there is one. Obviously, and my biggest concern really is the disconnect between the manager and the recruitment team. I see that as a bigger issue. And then yesterday, again on the socials, I was being asked about, what is your issue with the board? And, we're an incredibly well-run side, stroke business. And I get a lot of that, Jim. I don't have a specific issue with the board. What I've got an issue with, because I know the club's well-run, what I've got an issue with is just the way things are done. In that you've got a CEO who's a very powerful figure in Scottish and European football, coming back as your chairman. And then you've got people saying, but he's a chairman, and this is his job profile. This is the definition of a chairman. So he can't do this and he can't do that. Because we all know that in any type of business, anybody who has such a presence and such an influence, it's not about sticking to the definition of your job profile. He's going to have that influence in any case. And then you're in a situation when he comes back that the head of recruitment is the chairman's son. And even when you say it out loud, Jim, you just think, wait a minute, unless the chairman's son is phenomenal at that job and he is sought after all around Europe, I don't think it's a good idea to have that dynamic at the football club. Because what happens if you go 4 transfer windows, which this is his 4th, Mark Lowell, head of recruitment, and the results aren't good enough? What happens? And that is the issue here, because are they going to pull the trigger on someone whose chairman father has such an overbearing influence at Celtic, such a powerful character at Celtic? This isn't nothing personal. It's nothing. I've had the absolute pleasure on a couple of occasions in meeting Peter Lawwell. He was an absolute gentleman. I know he's a huge Celtic fan, absolutely. He came to Celtic in our darkest days back in the early 90s initially, Jim. What was he, a financial advisor? What was his job title back then?
Financial controller.
Financial controller under Terry Cassidy, I think it was.
Terry boy, yeah.
And obviously he's come back. He's made a massive, massive difference to the way the club is run financially. Totally get it. All credit due. But like a footballer, these things have cycles, Jim. And I think, like you were saying there about the kind of lack of, I don't know, imagination when we appointed Brendan Rodgers. I've said it before. I was completely behind the decision, but I understand when people say, "All right, we've got Peter Lovell back, we've got Brendan Rodgers back. Where are we going here? Are we moving forward? Are we moving back? Are we standing still?" And the issue I've got, if we go through this next few days, where are we now? The 26th. Next few days, 5 days. Don't bring anybody else in. The Greg Taylor injury is a problem. Joe Hart might be a problem. Kyogo might be a problem. And we don't win the league. What happens to the head of recruitment? Does the focus go on him, or is the focus on Brendan? Because Brendan will say, "I've not been backed the way I wanted to be backed. I asked for quality. I've not been given the quality." And I think we've kind of painted ourselves into the corner here, Jim, where it's a really difficult scenario. The dynamic is really, I think, difficult when the chairman is the father of the head of recruitment. If the head of recruitment's not good enough.
I think there's a number of issues in there. You take anyone who does a job and the manager leaves and you get their job, then you're thinking, well, I'll do my things my way. And then he comes back and then he potentially even more powerful position. How does that make you feel? Because under the kind of Ange and Michael Nicholson thing, we're all saying, that's working really well. The dynamic duo, this is great, brilliant. The chairman, doesn't matter about the chairman, no bother the chairman. These guys are working well. Yeah. And if you're Michael Nicholson and your ex-boss comes back, and as you said, he's a kind of a very kind of powerful individual, kind of similar to the Joe Hart thing, that because Joe Hart is not just a goalkeeper. Joe Hart, because of experience, his influence, is huge. So although you can say, well, the chairman's remit is to do X, Y, Z, it goes beyond that. It goes miles beyond that. And what I said quite near the start of this was the fact that if your job is to do X, Y, Z, and you fail to do the job, no matter how well you think you've done it, if your objectives are, we need to sign 3 players and you sign 1, or we need to sign 3 types of players and sign none of those players, then you've not done your job. And there's only so long you can last, because in actual fact, it is so fundamental to the whole team. Because if we don't have the correct recruitment, then the manager doesn't have the tools to do the job he's meant to do. So again, I think if we go back to, we don't really know what's happening. We don't know whose fault these things are. It could be that they're dead unlucky not getting players in, but at the end of the day, we don't care about that, because it's all about getting bodies in the door. And if we win the league, it's all forgotten. Who cares? If we don't win the league, you will then start to forensically look at every part of the season and decisions that were made, not just by recruitment or by the board, but by the manager as well. So everyone's in the firing line then. I also said earlier, when there's something obvious you should do and you don't do it, then you're totally to blame. So if Joe Hart gets injured and we lose the league, people are to blame for not bringing in a backup for that. I don't think Greg Taylor is as serious, because I think there's backups in the building there. Moving forward for Europe, if we're still, and I mean nothing bad against Greg Taylor, he's a good player, good season, etc. But if you want to do well in Europe, I think he's a bit better than Greg Taylor. If we get into the Champions League, hopefully next year, but with Greg Taylor being our main left back, there's a question you ask as well. Because in theory, this is the window where you're bringing in people to settle in for those few months to hopefully make an impact and hopefully in the Champions League. So, yeah, I think when you employ relatives in any organisation, it does raise suspicions, and they have to be better than everyone else. Because I mean, go back to my taking kids' football teams. If your son's in the team, he has to be really good, because all the eyes are on you. He's only playing because he's your boy, And a number of times I'd make my own boy sub because I'm thinking he's not playing that well, so I can't play him. So I'm, you're saying earlier, all this work you're doing all this work running a football team, and your son's a sub. And you think, well, why am I doing this? Because you're trying to be fair. And I think any situation where you've got relatives or close friends working in the same environment who work for you, they have to be doing their job and doing it well. And if they are doing their job and they're doing it well, there's no issues at all. No issues at all. But if they're falling below a standard that's acceptable, then you need to ask questions as well.
You do. And the questions will be asked, as you say, forensically at the end of this season. If it doesn't go to plan. Magnet 67, welcome to the show, afternoon, Acsom community. And it is a community. I love a Friday on Acsom. Jim or Alan? Who will it be this week? I'm going to guess Jim. Well, Jim is on every second week, and Alan will appear every second. Wait a minute. The second Friday of every month. That is the schedule that we work on. Celtic follower. There won't be a rush to bring in a left back. Scales, Bernabé, or even Lagerbielk can fill that role. I was looking to see his previous career. I can't see it, but I'm not disputing that fact. Although being impatient, I'd rather we bring in top targets and not emergency signings like Rangers do. Well, you're right. I don't want a panic buy. Absolutely don't want that. Sincerely hope that Martin O'Neill event in Greenock goes well tonight. Thank you very much. Gutted I can't be there. But we try our best to put on cracking events. Can't wait to hear some of the stories afterwards. It's a biggie. And, I take my hat off to anybody who performs on a regular basis, either on a stage, Jim, as a musician, or in the theatre, the game that you're in, or as a footballer on a football park. And they've got to do it consistently, because this once a month gig mentally is I would say,
well, you've upped the ante.
draining.
I mean, you've certainly upped the ante. Going down to the Beacon, 400 or 500 people there. It's a theatre. It's not in a pub where you can get away with a few things. In fact, it's so popular tonight, none of the Acsom guys could get a sniff of a ticket. That's how popular it is tonight. We dig there. And I've seen Martin O'Neill before. We saw Martin O'Neill, was that about a year and a half ago at
Yeah.
Bad. Yep. He's brilliant. He's a fantastic storyteller. Very self-deprecating. He's in a phenomenal career. Phenomenal. If you read his book, the Celtic section of his book is not that big. And he just does things. He's just like, well, I did that. And it's so kind of almost matter-of-factly. I forget the Irish team he played. He was 18, he joined this Irish team and they play Barcelona and he scores. No biggie. Goes signs for Forest the next year. He debuts at Old Trafford and he scores a goal. No biggie. And it's just more of the same. And he's a fascinating guy. There's very few pundits that I've got any time for. And he's one of the people that I do. Gordon Strachan's another one that I do. The rest of them, I don't see them. I mean, obviously they've played at, one assumes they've played at the top level, but they're not any more worth listening to than listening to a Kevin Graham or a JP or whoever. It's just people with opinions about football, And some of the takes pundits have on football, you're thinking, what? Really? Is that what you're saying? Really? So, but somebody like Gordon Strachan and certainly somebody like Martin O'Neill not only have the insight to that, but actually can tell the stories really well and give you that insight. It's not all about what this player did and what that player did. It's none of that stuff. It's about what he's thinking at the time and how things work. And he's funny with it as well, as is Gordon Strachan. Very funny. So they are, for me, those are two A-listers when it comes to the next home night. And you've upped the ante incredibly. And it sold out really quickly. So kudos to you, Mr. Dykes, young man. You've done really well.
I'm looking forward to it. And yes, I do love to enjoy these evenings with the Acsom team, Jim. But I've tried my best and I can't squeeze another seat out of the venue. 500 in the theatre plus 200 on a waiting list. It's been unbelievable. Martin O'Neill is worth the wait. It's going to be a phenomenal night. Tonight I'll be driving through in an hour or so to Greenock to get set up. So hopefully I'll see some of you guys and girls in the audience as well. Get your questions in. And I really, really am looking forward to it. Joseph McGonigal, here we go. There is a double to be won, and it starts on Saturday. Ross County, Jim, what's going on with the manager? The manager's not a happy chappy. Derek Adams comes back to the football club and has done nothing but criticise Ross County and Scottish football to the point where Tony Watt came out and defended Scottish football. It's a strange situation. Surely he knew what he was getting himself into here when he came to Ross County.
I think managerial appointments are quite bizarre. You've only got to look at the Michael Beale one at Sunderland. So what possesses people to bring managers in? Who knows? But given the fact Derek Adams has been there before, maybe they're thinking safe pair of hands. But he's been really outspoken, and you then think, well, what's the reason for that? What's behind that? And that's the thing you don't know. Because the thing I wasn't alone after the Glasgow derby, and what what struck me, the whole kind of furore after was about, the decisions and stuff like that. And you're thinking, how does that work? Who talks to who and who decides whatever? And I'm driving home, and I mean, you're an interviewer. That's what you do for a living. And they interviewed Clement, and the first thing the journalist says was, "Did the best team win today?" And you're thinking, no wonder he went mad, because you're thinking when you interview people, and the first question is going to be a nice wee gentle lob, get them on side, maybe a kind of open question. What do you think of the game today, Philippe, sort of thing? And maybe if his team won, you'd have said, do you think you deserve to win today? But to say, did the best team win? That set him off. Mm-hmm. And I wonder where, from that, he goes upstairs and say, I'm get something done about the penalty, whatever. I don't know. But we don't know what goes on behind the scenes. We don't know what motivates people to say things. So why would you take on a job and then be so outspoken? He's not a young guy. He's not a naive young guy that's doing this for the first time. So, like everything people do, what was his motivation for doing that? I don't know. You've got the job, you've got the gig, on you go. They're fortunate that Livingston are having such a poor season and the other teams aren't doing too. I think I looked at before coming on, I think they're 5 points off seventh, even though they're sitting second bottom. So there's a lot to play for this season. So why come out and antagonise lots of people? What's your motivation for doing that? I don't know. Do you want to get sacked? Do you want the compensation? Who knows? But it was a weird thing to say. And he didn't say it just the once. He said that a few times. So basically, I would say, what's your motivation for saying what you've said?
No, you're right. As you say, he's not new to the game. Over 700 managerial games he's been in charge of, and we will be facing his side at the weekend. You're hoping for a victory, of course. Who's going to be playing left back? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section. And is that now the biggest priority? It might have always been the priority in this particular transfer window. I've got to thank everybody for getting involved, and if you're coming along tonight, please say hi. It'll be great to meet you. Really looking forward to it. Greenock, love a wee visit to Greenock. Love the CSC down there as well. Been there a number of times. It's always a pleasure to see you. Well over 1,000 live on this Friday afternoon. Join me for the game tomorrow. We'll be back for the Ross County game. All that's left for me to say, Jim Orr, the one and only, thank you again for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers, Paul.